In the spring of 1943, the war hung in a delicate balance. Hitler's armies were stretched across Europe. North Africa was collapsing under Allied pressure, and the next great question was where the Allies would strike next. The obvious target seemed to be Sicily. It was the gateway to southern Europe, the perfect stepping stone to Italy. And Hitler knew it. The German defenses were already being strengthened there. Coastal guns, mines, and tanks waiting for the invasion that everyone expected. But what if the Allies could make him look somewhere else? What if they could trick Hitler into guarding the wrong door? That idea, to fool the Führer himself, gave birth to one of the most audacious deceptions in the history of war, Operation Mincemeat. It was a plan that would rely not on armies or tanks, but on a single dead man. In London, inside the offices of British Naval Intelligence, a group of eccentric minds began crafting the scheme. Among them were Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montague and Flight Lieutenant Charles Cholmondeley, men who understood that in war, perception can be as powerful as bullets. The idea had been inspired by a memo written years earlier by none other than Ian Fleming, who would later become famous as the creator of James Bond. Fleming's note proposed using a dead body carrying false papers to mislead the enemy. It was considered far-fetched at the time. But now, with the invasion of Sicily looming, it suddenly seemed possible. The operation's success would hinge on one thing: finding a corpse that could pass as a British officer who had died in a plane crash at sea. After days of searching, the team found what they needed: the body of a homeless man named Glinder Michael, who had died in London after ingesting rat poison. His death was a tragedy of circumstance, but in death, he would serve a purpose greater than anyone could have imagined. They would turn him into a fictional officer, Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. The transformation was meticulous. Every detail of Major Martin's life had to be believable: his uniform, his papers, even the things in his pockets. British intelligence built him a full identity. They placed theater ticket stubs in his wallet, letters from a fiancée named Pam, and a photograph of her smiling, an image carefully chosen to humanize him. There were love letters filled with small, believable details, talk of London weather, promises to reunite after the war. They even included a bill for an engagement ring, a bank statement, and an overdue letter from his father. Nothing could appear too neat. It had to look real, like the contents of a man's life suddenly cut short. Then came the centerpiece: the false documents. Inside a leather briefcase handcuffed to Major Martin's wrist, they placed top-secret letters suggesting that the Allies were preparing to invade Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. These letters were written as if between high-ranking British officers, complete with signatures and official seals. To anyone reading them, it would seem clear that Sicily was just a diversion, a feint meant to pull German forces away from the real invasion. On April 30th, 1943, a British submarine, HMS Seraph, surfaced off the coast of Spain under cover of darkness. The crew brought the body up to the deck. They carefully placed him into the cold Atlantic waters, allowing the tide to carry him toward shore. With him drifted the briefcase, the false documents inside ready to be found. The submarine then slipped away silently, leaving behind what looked like a tragic accident of war: an airman lost at sea. Hours later, Spanish fishermen discovered the corpse floating near the coast of Huelva. They alerted local authorities, and soon the body and briefcase were in the hands of Spanish officials. This was exactly what British intelligence had hoped for. Spain, though officially neutral, was filled with German agents. Word of the discovery quickly reached the local Abwehr, German military intelligence. The Germans pressed Spanish contacts for access to the documents. Through a web of bribery and diplomacy, they succeeded. What followed was a masterpiece of espionage theater. Spanish authorities secretly opened the briefcase, photographed the letters, and passed the copies to German agents. Then, to maintain the illusion, they resealed the case and returned it to the British embassy, pretending nothing had happened. When British intelligence received it, they knew from subtle marks and moisture patterns that it had been opened. The bait had been taken. Within days, the documents were on Adolf Hitler's desk. He pored over them, convinced they were genuine. The deception was so perfect that even his most skeptical generals accepted it as truth. The Führer immediately concluded that Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily, were the targets of the Allied invasion. Orders were issued to move German divisions, panzer units, aircraft, and reinforcements away from Sicily toward Greece. The trap had worked. Meanwhile, in Britain, Montagu and his team could only wait. They didn't know for sure if the plan had succeeded, not until German troop movements began shifting on their intelligence maps. Radio intercepts from the codebreakers at Bletchley Park confirmed it. The Germans were reinforcing Greece heavily. In Sicily, defenses were weakened, commanders were confused, and the few remaining troops were unsure where the real invasion would come from. On July 9, 1943, the Allies launched Operation Husky, the real invasion of Sicily. Despite rough weather, over 150,000 troops stormed the beaches. The German and Italian response was disorganized. Many of their best units were still stationed far to the east, guarding against an invasion that would never come. Within weeks, the island was captured, a decisive victory that opened the path to Mussolini's downfall and the eventual Allied push into mainland Europe. Only a handful of people knew that the victory had been set in motion months earlier by a single corpse floating off the coast of Spain. The man once known as Glyndwr Michael, now immortalized as Major William Martin, had played a silent role in changing the course of history. After the operation's success, Montagu and his team destroyed much of the evidence to protect future missions. They wrote sanitized reports and maintained official secrecy for decades. The public would not learn the true story until long after the war ended. When it finally came out, it seemed almost unbelievable. A plot so daring it could have been fiction. Yet every element had been real, crafted with precision and human empathy. Even in the grim business of war, there was something hauntingly poetic about Operation Mincemeat. It was deception used not for greed or malice, but to save lives. The operation's success meant fewer Allied soldiers died storming defended beaches. It also highlighted the strange intersection between morality and manipulation, how the dead man's identity became both a tool and a tribute. In later years, when asked about the operation, Ewan Montagu remarked that the most remarkable thing about it was not that it worked, but that the enemy believed it so completely. In an age before digital forensics, before deepfakes or satellite verification, intelligence work was a game of storytelling. The side that told the most convincing story often won. And in this case, a single story, written on forged letters carried by a dead man, helped alter the outcome of the war. The body of Major William Martin was buried with full military honors in Spain under a white headstone that read, William Martin, Major, Royal Marines, born 29th March 1907, died 24th April 1943, beloved son of John Glyndwr Martin and the late Antonia Martin of Cardiff, Wales. Of course, none of that was true. The man beneath the stone had never been a major, nor a Royal Marine, nor a son of the names listed. But to the people who had given him this false life, and to the soldiers whose real lives were spared because of him, he was very real indeed. Years later, after British archives were declassified, historians uncovered the man's true identity. Glyndwr Michael, the homeless Welshman, was finally recognized. He had no surviving family, no medals, no photograph, yet his contribution to history was immense. Without him, the Germans might have concentrated their defenses in Sicily and turned the invasion into a bloodbath. His unwitting sacrifice had shifted the balance of war. Operation Mincemeat went on to inspire countless books, documentaries, and films. It became the gold standard of wartime deception, a perfect fusion of psychology, espionage, and imagination. Even modern intelligence agencies still study it as a lesson in how to manipulate enemy assumptions. It proved that in war, as in life, what people believe can be more powerful than what is true. As the Second World War raged on, countless secret operations followed, each trying to shape perceptions, twist reality, and outwit the other side. But none had the quiet elegance or human poignancy of mincemeat. It wasn't just a clever ruse. It was the story of how the Allies turned tragedy into strategy, and how one forgotten man became the most successful spy who never lived. And somewhere, beneath the soil of southern Spain, the man once called William Martin still lies, his grave tended carefully by locals who know the story. Visitors bring flowers, and every year the British government renews the wreath upon his headstone. His legend remains a symbol of ingenuity and sacrifice, a reminder that even in a world consumed by war, a single human story can change everything. The deception that began with a dead man and a briefcase would echo through history as one of the cleverest and strangest victories ever won. Hitler had been fooled by fiction, and fiction had changed the world.